Welcome to the broadcast, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm going to be following up on yesterday's broadcast, the one that I provided late last night. Thank you for the wonderful comments and observations you've been making. This is a sequel because Buckingham Palace have spoken in a very rare and unusual statement. A spokesperson was very blunt in response to Harry's assertions and said all of these issues have been examined repeatedly and meticulously by the courts with the same conclusion reached on each occasion. Hear, hear. And this is a photograph of this scene at the interview location. It was a meeting point a few miles away from the Sussex Den in Montecito. And the interviewer, by the name of Nada Tawfik, something along those lines, describes it as dawn in a beautiful, expensively landscaped home in Santa Barbara. And Harry arrived with no entourage. I thought he was petrified about his security. Harry put out a statement from the office of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in their usual vulgar style. And it was all in big capitals as well. A statement from Prince Harry to show how important he is. And I'm actually going to read out the entire thing. And it's quite long, so you might wish to skip it. But I think that it's an insight into what's going on in his mind and important to know. I want to start by thanking my legal team and the Court of Appeal judges for their time and expertise in unravelling this issue that stemmed from the previous government. This process has only ever been about ensuring my safety and that of my immediate family when we're in the United Kingdom, so that we may safely visit my home country with the same level of security that other governments deem necessary for our protection. My ask has been simple: that the standard protocols for security and risk assessments be applied to me in the same way they are to others, including people who have never carried out any public functions on behalf of the state. The court's ruling confirms that the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures, known as RAVEC and comprised of senior officials from the Royal Household, Home Office and Metropolitan Police, has failed to follow its own mandated processes for me, which are applied to all other high-risk and high-profile individuals. Given my profound concerns over this issue, I will be writing to the Home Secretary to ask her to urgently examine the matter and review the RAVEC process. This legal action has been a last resort, but one that has uncovered shocking truths, starting with the fact that the Royal Household are key decision-makers on RAVEC and my sole representation for matters regarding my safety. In this process, I've also learned the names of all those involved, many of whom retired immediately after playing their part. In November 2017, before the Royal Household's role on RAVEC was known, this secretive committee concluded that when my wife would join the royal family, she should not receive protection. Only when I asked for the name of the person willing to carry that risk did they reverse the decision. In 2020, RAVEC refused for the first time to conduct the required annual risk, threat and impact assessment that their own policies demand. The intention of this assessment is to be objective and free from bias and interference to confirm the security required. The result was stripping me of the protection I've had since birth, while signalling to all other governments to do the same. This reckless action knowingly put me and my family in harm's way. Life is precious, and I understand the fragility of it. Throughout 2020 and 2021, I attempted to resolve this issue privately, even offering to independently cover the costs of necessary and effective police protection in order to keep me and my family safe. No one responded directly to me about my offer when I made it, and even though I challenged the refusal to let me pay, my legal claim failed. To this present day, the Royal Household remain my sole representation on RAVEC for every visit, and could call for this assessment to be done at any point. The only possible conclusion that can be drawn is they choose not to, because they know the outcome would prove that my security should never have been removed in the first place. In recent years, my family and I have been subjected to well-documented neo-Nazi and extremist threats, including from Al-Qaeda. There are individuals in prison on UK soil because of such threats, and yet, since 2019, a proper risk assessment has not been conducted. This is not only a deviation from standard practice, it's a dereliction of duty. The stark difference is I was born into lifelong circumstances that create inherent security risks. My decade of military service, particularly 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, as well as social and tabloid media frenzy, have only intensified those threats. Uncovering how my immediate family's safety was knowingly put at risk, as well as who was behind it and who sanctioned it, has been truly devastating. No matter where we may agree or disagree, I would never wish harm on anyone. These legal proceedings have revealed to me that this basic duty of care was not and is not applied to me. It's true that I've been treated as an exception on this issue. The conditions of my security were not made based on threat, risk and impact. They were made based on my role, one that my wife and I wanted to maintain, but that was ultimately refused. RAVEC's ability to make decisions outside of its own policies and the so-called political sensitivities of my case have prevailed over the need for fair and consistent decision-making. The court has decided to defer to this, revealing a sad truth. My hands are tied in seeking legal recourse against the establishment. This all comes from the same institutions that preyed upon my mother, that openly campaigned for the removal of our security, and that continue to incite hatred towards me, my wife, and even our children, while at the same time protecting the very power that they should be holding accountable. The UK is my birthplace and will always be part of who I am. It is a place I love, and the country where my son was born. I only ever wanted to continue my charitable work in supporting the causes and people that mean so much to me, and for my children to know the beauty of my homeland. I remain committed to a life of public service. This has been and will always be my life's work, and when you strip away the noise, you'll be able to hear all I've been asking for is safety. Yes, you are entitled to ask, Harry. You're perfectly entitled. But RAVEC are perfectly entitled to say no, which they've said again and again and again, but you wouldn't receive it, would you? When anybody says no to you, that is a red rag to a red bull. And all the whispers are that Prince Harry's behaviour this week will do nothing at all to alleviate the tensions, or the standoff, if that's what you want to call it, between he and the royal household, and if anything, it might invigorate it. This is what the whispers point to, that this sort of behaviour just confirms what everybody already thinks and feels and knows about Harry and the trouble with Harry. You know, the king lives under tremendous pressure. Tremendous pressure, for those of you who might forget. You know, the scope of his responsibilities is absolutely astonishing when you sit and think about it for a moment, you know. When you actually break it down, it is terrifying. He is steward, he is custodian, he is sovereign, he is head of state, not only here, but of his 15 realms. He is the head of the Commonwealth. His trusts, his charities, his homes, his magnificent estates, his patronages, his role as the Duke of Lancaster, you know, and he's signing off on government business, his government's business, every single day, with the red boxes brought to him for everything to sign off on. And on top of that, he's also a family man, and very beloved by the vast majority of his family. And all of this, by the way, at the age that most folk are setting off into the sunset of retirement. Do you understand? And while he's plunged into the traumatic experience of a serious diagnosis to cope with and its treatment plan. And after all of that, he still finds the time for the personal touch, as I saw only yesterday at a reception that he hosted. The personal touch for humour, for conversation, for well wishes. And you might remember that it was Harry himself who told us how the king pleaded with them, with both of his boys. Harry told us in spare that he said, "Please, boys, don't make my last years a misery. Don't make my final years a misery, boys." Well, that was Harry's interpretation. Let's face it, the fact is, he wasn't really addressing it to both boys. He might have said it to spare the spare's feelings, but in actual fact, he was speaking to you, Harry. He knows he can count on William not to twist the knife. William is no longer a child. But Harry, our darling H, is like a dog with a bone. A little bone, but a bone nevertheless. And he puts relentless pressure upon the king. It is absolutely relentless as he's going through all of these travails. And he is utterly selfish. And the clearest illustration of Harry's selfishness, if you ask me, was again provided by Harry himself. The very day when Charles acceded to the throne as the late Queen lay dying, imagine the import of that moment for Charles, this moment that has been his life's destiny, that he's been waiting for as the longest heir apparent in history. Imagine that day, imagine that moment. And by the way, even the king's most sour detractors were full of goodwill, weren't they? Do you remember? When the Queen died and he became king, they were full of goodwill, and a lot of people found that they had a surprising amount of affection in their hearts for Charles, who they'd seen grow up as a young and very affectionate boy. Well, I wonder if it occurs to Harry that Queen Elizabeth, who planned to die at Balmoral, she knew she was going to die, planned to die there at her beloved Balmoral, has it ever occurred to Harry that she had also meticulously ensured that her wishes were carried out? Well, at that moment, the king has Harry on the phone. "Oh, Pa, it's me. I've got to talk to you. Why won't you let Meghan come up to see the Queen? Why can't my wife come with me?" he demands to know. He's on at Charles in this moment for the perceived insult that his wife has suffered. Can you Adam and Eve it? I can't to this day. It illustrates his selfishness. It was all about him and the wife. Catherine, on the other hand, in an act of selfless maturity, made the first move, and she stayed away. She decided to stay away. She could have accompanied William. Now, of course, we're told that it was to look after the children and make sure that they were okay, and of course that's true, and that is correct. But, Catherine, the beloved daughter-in-law of Charles, the beloved daughter-in-law as he calls her, would have absolutely been embraced and would absolutely have been delighted to have been received by the rest of the family up there. So ask yourself if Catherine's absence was truly just due to the children, or was it to help discourage Meghan and the cameo role of the actress, the Araviste, and to aid the rebuffment of Harry's complaints? I truly believe that Catherine stayed away to help ameliorate what they knew was bubbling up, and the situation involving the friction between Harry and Charles. And the simple fact is that the Sussexes ruin the atmosphere whenever they're around the family. They might be all gaiety and sunshine and rainbows for the Montecito set and all of their happy, hunky-dory perma-grins, all of that fakery, my dear. They fit right in. But in royal circles, in sober English gatherings, they ruin the atmosphere. It's like somebody dropping their guts in a lift, an elevator, and then scuttling away to leave a guilty, putrid odour. The atmosphere is sullied. Yes, even when they've left the room, when they've been there, the atmosphere is sullied because everybody knows about their deep-seated resentment and the sort of malevolence of their presence. But the trouble is that Meghan goads him on, doesn't she? She goads him on behind the scenes. Looks like the innocent flower, but is the serpent beneath. "Oh, my dragon slayer, my darling Has, my fox, oh, you're such a fox. You sexy fox. And I'm Megan Fox, the new Meggie Fox." No, he's not a dragon slayer, he's not a protector, and he's certainly not a fox, my dear. He's a weasel. And I don't mean to disparage weasels, they're splendid creatures, but he's a weasel, darling. He's a weasel, a tweasel. And he's been accusing the Court of Appeal and His Majesty's government of a stitch-up, as we spoke of yesterday. We discussed this. And he's got all these conspiracy ideas that is the establishment trying to stitch him up. Well, I'm told that courtiers are absolutely horrified by this. Horrified, but not surprised. He's always up to mischief, isn't he? And one insider told the press, these are sort of confirmed insiders, if you will, in various sources. One said, royal insiders, one said there is nothing that could be trusted to remain private. And as for there being no contact, well, he has just proven why, yet again. And another royal source told ITV, for a son who claims to want a family reconciliation, it's certainly a very curious way to build bridges or offer olive branches. Isn't it just? Isn't it just? It's inelegant, and it is absolutely vulgar. and infradig. Ailsa Anderson is a name you might know because she was the press secretary, communications and press secretary to Queen Elizabeth. Well, she has spoken out to say how unhelpful all of this is coming from Harry. She said that it's going to cause real concern and more speculation in the media and the wider public about what his diagnosis is, which is incredibly unhelpful going forward. Well, indeed. He should have kept his trap shut on His Majesty's condition and his speculation. What you don't want to do is have your private life played out in the media. So if you truly want reconciliation, you'll do it in private, not in a BBC News interview. Seems simple, doesn't it? Seems simple. But no, not in Harry's world. Clarissa's Closet is a viewer who left a comment in regards to Harry saying that his security involves someone on the end of a phone when he comes to the kingdom. You know, he suggests that's basically all he's privy to, all he's allowed. Oh, there's someone on the end of the phone, but I don't have great military and assistance and intelligence at my fingertips. Well, Clarissa's Closet says, River, do you remember when William was accosted on the Sandringham estate by a photographer? He showed a very angry video clip of William on the phone to his security. There was no guard with him or seemingly close by. I suspect the Wales family have less security on non-working days than people believe. It reminded me when H says he gets someone on the end of the phone. William had that too. Such a good point, my dear, such a good point. Also, and this is my point, also do you remember when the king, and he hadn't been king for very long, but he was caught out walking, wasn't he? In the middle of the wilderness, apparently in the middle of nowhere, by some vloggers, and they put up a fabulous video on YouTube where he was so ordinary, His Majesty, so ordinary he was. It was a captivating piece of footage, so ordinary and so lovely to all of them. And actually, it reflected very well on His Majesty because he didn't realise that he was being filmed as well to begin with, but he was so natural and normal, completely alone, walking in Scotland, wasn't it? Out in the hills. Well, of course, he is always in contact with his security team. They always know his whereabouts, more or less. They're always in reach. But with the King and with William, and of course with Harry, there is an adaptation that is made. You know, they adapt to the person and the occasion, the location and the risk and the requirement at the specific time. And I'm afraid... And Anne has said this herself, by the way. She said this on television. So I'm not telling tales out of school. But she has said, and I agree, that, you know, if a malevolent individual or an organisation, such as the ones that Harry is so afraid of that are going to get hold of him. And I don't blame him for having many fears, by the way. There are Fruit Loops out there. You know, I have to deal with them behind the scenes as well. On this tiny little microcosm of the macrocosm. Most people in the public eye in some way or other, and even those who aren't, have to deal with fixated individuals or vengeful individuals or those who are just plain nasty. But as Anne has said, if a malevolent individual or group wants to get to you, they can. I mean, it wouldn't take a work of genius. It wouldn't take a genius to be able to arrange to end an individual that they take a disliking to or have a grudge against, would it, you know? Because all members of the royal family appear in public and in the open air. They are all at risk all the time. At every one of these gatherings, my dear, you know, we've seen the king, luckily not recently actually, but in the first months of his kingship, you know, people were chucking eggs at him. I don't think any of them actually reached him, did they? I think they missed it. There was eggs being thrown and things being pelted at the king. You know, they could have been something other than eggs and flour. I'm just making the point that everybody out there is at risk and is vulnerable. But they get on with the job, get on with the role, and there's actually very rarely any sort of international incident. You know, the only one that springs to my mind from this kingdom in recent decades, although it was rather a long time ago now, is Lord Mountbatten, who was so close to the king, of course, And naturally, I understand that Diana met her very, very sad demise in pursuit from the press, but conspiracy theories aside, they weren't out to end her intentionally, should we put it that way. Nicola Marchbank brings up the name of Birgitta Gloucester. I call her Gitty Gloucester. We love our Duchess of Gloucester, don't we? Gitty Gloucester and Dicky Gloucester. We love them. And she says, I'm a great fan of the Duchess of Gloucester. Me too. She is a woman. And she's not a 43-year-old child like another duchess, is she, my dear? A woman. W-O-M-A-N. She just gets on with it with such professionalism and put aside all of her aspirations all those years ago for her adopted country in the middle of such deep loss. Yes, we are her adopted country. For those who don't understand, she is from Danish stock. She's Danish. A very worthy Garter recipient too. I'm so glad she got it. Sophie has turned into such an asset, and Edward has found his stride and his place, having spent a while when he was younger looking for it. As they all do, my dear, and as we all do, don't we? Goes to show how finding a good partner in life can make such a difference, unlike his nephew. Indeed. They all contrast with the dreadful Montecito pair so excellently. Absolutely. And I would like to make the point, in addition to your wonderful comment, my dear, that the resistance to the behaviour of Harry and Meghan that we see all over the press today, because there is great resistance to what Harry has been coming out with. It is so important, and I'll tell you why it's so important, my dear, because it's so important that we do not allow this sort of petulant, childish, immature, tantrum-throwing behaviour to become normalised in our culture, or any culture, because so much childishness is normalised these days for grown adults, isn't it? People are forgetting what adulthood and what being a grown-up actually feels like or felt like decades ago. And people are being encouraged into this childishness. And as I've said, there's nothing wrong with being a little childlike here and there. I'll be childlike till the day I die. But this immaturity should not be normalised. So it's really important, because vulgarity swiftly becomes the norm if it's not challenged or if it's not contrasted with elegance and stoicism. Well, lots of the nice stories this week were buried in Harry's news yesterday. But Canadian fruit crumbles, you must be very, very happy, my dears, many of you. And I have so many gorgeous Canadian basketeers. Well, the King is going to visit your beloved Commonwealth realm, the King's Commonwealth realm of Canada, once known as the Dominion of Canada, which I rather love, I've got to tell you. And this is for a royal visit, only 1 or 2 days though, my loves. For now, but I've got a feeling you're going to have some more tours coming up, perhaps from the Waleses, when they're ready. But this royal visit will be at the end of May, and together with his consort, the Queen, their Majesties are going to be attending the state opening of the Parliament of Canada in Ottawa. I always forget that that's your capital. Do excuse me, my dears, it's my ignorance. A lot of people, for some reason, assume that I'm quite learned and rather academic. I'm not. I'm really not. I didn't go to university, for one thing. Heaven forbid. I'm not well educated at all. I just fumble along and do my best here and there. But I'm not educated. I always forget about capital cities unless they're obvious, like Paris and London and New York. I always have to scratch my head at them. Canada's one of them, you know, because I always think, when I think Canada, I think Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, even Manitoba, but Ottawa I rarely hear of, so it goes out of the mind, you know what I mean, my dear. And then there's, it's the same thing with Australia. One always thinks of Sydney and Melbourne, and I always have to scratch my head to remember that, no, Canberra is the capital, isn't it? Canberra. And congratulations to those of you who might have voted for Anthony Albanese Albanese, rather, to be your Prime Minister, because he's already the Prime Minister incumbent, but I think as of today his party have been victorious. They are the left-leaning party, aren't they? Yes, they are the left of centre Labour government that claimed victory, and the King was invited to formally open Canada's 45th Parliament by the new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. This is the first time in decades that a reigning British monarch is going to preside over the occasion. And isn't it ingenious? And isn't it fabulous? And very much needed. And the King is going to deliver Canada's speech from the throne while he's there. And Mark Carney said that this clearly underscores the sovereignty of our country. And I'm sure you've heard me speak many times about the soft power of royalty. And here you see it in full display, full regal display. We have an elegant head of state, shared with Canada and all the King's realms. We do not have an ephemeral politician with ambitions for power. You know, that is the nature of the politician. The King and our Queens are born with, or to power. They are born to power, and the heat of that power has an especial quality, doesn't it, my dears? It glows like the reassuring embers of a crackling hearth, rather than the ballistic furnace that you find with princes and politicians alike. I was going to say politicians, but we can throw Harry in there. I mean, he's a bit of a misnomer. So it happens with royalty as well, but luckily he was second in line. Or indeed, as you'll find in a President Trump, you know, when he might need a little bit of reining in. Linda Berg was a Canadian basketeer who shared her sentiments, and I had sentiments from quite a few of you. Do know that I saw your comments, those of you coming and excited about the King coming to Canada. But Linda Berg said, the King is coming to Canada and I'm beyond delighted. He couldn't do anything better to show Canada and indeed the world his support of Canada and all Canadians, and I'm one of them, in the current political controversy of us becoming the 51st state of the USA. Long live the King. And the King was on spectacular form at another reception where their Majesties and the Prince of Wales hosted a lovely little get-together at Windsor Castle for the holders of the Victoria Cross and George Cross. You know, most of these are war heroes. War heroes. The Victoria Cross is awarded to those serving in British and Commonwealth forces who have shown tremendous bravery, and the George Cross, which can be awarded to anyone, is given to people who show heroism or courage in extreme danger. His Majesty has been patron of the VC and GC Association since 2022. Camilla looked gorgeous in green. I love it. I love it. And I especially enjoyed her little comment to one of the gentlemen there. She was clutching her wine and she said, all I drink is red wine. It's very good for you. Oh, she's a gal after my own heart, I'll tell you that. Although I do enjoy red, I don't usually drink it because it gives me black lips and black tongue, and it looks quite unsightly on me, as if I've got bleeding gums or something. It stains me and it gives me an awful hangover, awful. But I do like to sit and nurse one, on a nice winter's night. I have the white wines and the sparkles and the fizz most of the time. But they were all working the room so professionally, taking an interest in everybody. And Charles actually, as you see him in motion, he looks a lot better and more sprightly and more youthful, I feel, than some of the photos you see of him looking, it has to be said, very craggy. But I could not be more proud of the way that he's going about his business, working so hard and diligently on our behalf while being disparaged by one of the sons. Terrible. But he and Camilla were joined by the King and Queen of Sweden to plant a Swedish oak tree in Home Park at Windsor, and the tree was a gift from King Carl in celebration of the 2023 coronation. And we did not get time to glimpse the photograph, the official photograph of Charlotte that was provided by the Prince and Princess of Wales to celebrate her 10th birthday yesterday. This was taken on Catherine's iPhone. Isn't it marvellous what can be done now? It was in Cumbria and published by Kensington Palace, hiking through the hills by the looks of it, with a rucksack in tow. I want to spend more time in Cumbria. I've got an associate living in Cumbria that I keep meaning to go and visit. I actually took a lover from Cumbria some time ago that I remember, who was so handsome, and heavenly body he had. I think he worked on the oil refineries. I don't know if it was in Cumbria, but if they've got oil refineries in Cumbria, it was he a trader? Something to do with oil anyway. But he was lovely. Memories, bygones. Okay, I'm going to leave you to enjoy your evening. I'm going to go and enjoy mine. I'll see you on the next broadcast, my dears. Thank you for joining me, and toodle pip.